So here's a question that I really want answered, and I'm sure many young people, male and female, want answered too. Can you get abs while bulking? Because I know as a as a young teenager, you look at social media and stuff, and you see someone taking pictures, and they've got these washboard abs, and you're like, whoa, that's pretty cool. Wonder if I can do that, but as we all know, the first stage of bodybuilding is bulking, and that's when you put on weights, you put on muscle, and you try not to overdo it, but there's a lot of debate. Can you put on abs while bulking, or can you not? So, what do you think, Coach?
Um, well, I was stuck in that same thought as well because yeah, the short answer to that is no. And let me put a bit of context behind that of why the no is. So if you're coming from a very lean build and you've already got abs, so just say you're an ectomorph build
Yeah,
and you're putting on size and all that sort of stuff, then yes, you will probably maintain your lean muscle will go up. Your body fat might go up a little bit, but it'll come to a certain point that, just say if you started at 50 kilos and you trained for a couple of years and you got up to 70 kilos, particularly if you're a young teenager, you might actually find that when you gained your 20 kilos, there's a large percentage of that might actually be lean muscle.
yeah,
To a certain extent, maybe 10 kilos, maybe not 20, but and if you're very early, if you're 50 kilos when you're like 12 or something like that, that's not uncommon to get a 20 kilo increase, 50 kilos to 70 kilos, particularly for a male, because, well, you're still growing. Like if you're only like, if you're just say your maximum height that you grow to is like 6'1",
yeah,
and when you're 50 kilos, you might only be 5'4". Well, in that calculation, it's not just lean muscle. It looks like you're gaining muscle, but you've also gone taller. So your organs have gotten bigger, your bones have gotten bigger, you've gotten more skin, your head's probably gotten bigger. Everything's grown. Your foot's gotten bigger. So in that respect, those sort of builds, those people can actually maintain their abs to a certain extent, and they might be able to hold on to that for a certain period of their life, maybe up until they're before they're 30, and then it might be a lot harder because the hormone level changes. The metabolism of eating whatever you want when you're an ectomorph might actually change, and then all of a sudden you go start gaining body weight, and then you're like, well now what do? I haven't planned for this. So that's one way that it could be, but it might stay that way up to a certain limit. But a person, even if they're an ectomorph, if they push it hard enough, you can actually still gain enough body fat. In terms of the larger individual that may not have never seen their abs before, will they ever see them? Yeah, eventually they probably could if they diet hard enough, or if they gain sufficient amount of lean muscle. But most people, when you look at when abs are showing in terms of like photos of people on Instagram and that sort of stuff,
yeah,
they might be sitting anywhere between abs usually show anywhere between 13 and 14%. That's the outline of the abdominal starts showing up.
yeah,
And then they start getting what people call good at around 10%.
yeah,
What we see on Instagram or what we see on Facebook or TikTok or something like that is a lot of the time it'll be people in their peak condition, and then they've taken a whole lot of photos, and they've had numerous amount of photo shoots in the best lighting, wearing the
yeah.
best tan.
Where the best lighting, the golden hour kind of
Oh,
thing.
absolutely, yeah, and then
Dehydrated.
we'll talk about that on a different episode. But the thing with that, and even in Hollywood, like if you think about the Baywatch scene for Zac Efron, or
Yeah.
they call them shirts off scene, like Who's that guy with the razor sharp claws?
Well, Hugh Jackman.
Yeah, so Wolverine. There's YouTube clips on when he talks about, even interviews when he talks about the shirts off scene and that sort of stuff, and they they get their body fat level down. But the same thing, that conditioning generally for the majority of most people is only sustainable for only a couple of weeks. Now,
Yeah.
there are some rare people out there that they can hold that sort of condition throughout the year. I'd be very interested to see what they eat and what sort of portions they eat. A really good example, unless you're training like a CrossFitter, where you're doing a whole lot of interval training, you're doing, a lot of strength work, a lot of cardio work throughout the day, then if you look at any of the top CrossFitters, and they're probably in their early 20s, mid 20s, they look pretty good, and they hold that conditioning because for them it's a power to weight ratio, same as a gymnast. So if you're heavier, then it's a lot harder to do muscle ups. It's a lot harder to do, the rings. It's a lot harder to do high bar and that sort of stuff. So the power to weight ratio for a CrossFitter, it's in their best interest that they don't carry any extra body weight.
Yeah.
Do you have to look like them to be a successful CrossFitter? No, not at all. Of course not. But it's probably easier. In terms of what you see, there's, like we said, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors out there. So
definitely in that sense. And could you at least and he's for myself coming from a overweight physique as a kid, and the whole idea of bulking, people say, oh, eat until you drop, kind of this, which isn't true in the slightest. Can you maintain a flattish stomach, or are you going to gain extra stomach fat there? Are you going to gain like a food baby, if you will?
just give me 1 minute.
All right.
Hang on, I'm going to have a coffee fit. I'm going to piece this question.
All right.
All right. So to answer your question in terms of maintaining that flat stomach, gaining body fat is based on our hormones. So we unfortunately can't determine where we want to lose it. So if you look down and you're like, I don't like that. I don't like to look at my stomach. Or you might be, I don't like to look at my backside. Or, I don't like the look of underneath my arms. Like they all fall under the territory of the certain amount of insecurities that we have. Now, they can reduce to a certain extent. Unfortunately, like for women, a lot of the times they usually want their hips to decrease for whatever reason. Usually, the place you want to lose it, the place you want to lose it first is the place you lose it last. So that's really frustrating. So maintaining that flatter stomach in that per se, that really depends on those hormones
depends on the person's depends on the person.
Your biomechanics and your structure and that sort of thing. Now it's an interesting observation when you watch the growth of a young person transition from, just say they were chubby when they're younger, and then all of a sudden as they get closer to 18, 20 years old, all the body fat starts to just, almost like it melts away in some ways. The body just shoots up, the limbs go out, everything gets stretched. And then before you know it, the shape completely changes. And then like 3 years go past, and then you're like, you don't even recognize yourself in the mirror. Well, maybe you do, but you probably do as when it's your actual self. But if someone hasn't seen you in a couple of years, they're like, what happened? So So
What kind
maintaining that flat stomach, that's really going to only come about through moderating how much intake a person eats. Now, limiting how much amount of processed sugar that a person eats, that's probably one of the best ways to mitigate against just gaining unnecessary amounts of body fat, because that really doesn't do a great deal for us. All it does is just send our blood sugar level, like insulin spike, it just shoots it up. It makes us feel good temporarily, sugar, and then
sugar?
then it drops. So pretty much sugar, it stimulates the same sort of senses that people when they're taking things like heroin and ecstasy and that sort of stuff, where it lights up the brain. It's the same sort of thing. And the argument might be, well, if it has the same side effects as those drugs that are illegal, then why do they sell them? Well, I'm not the Food and Drug Administration, so I'm just telling you what the effects are when from coaching people for so many years. So if we can now, things like all fruits have a certain amount of sugar, but they're from a natural source. So are they better than processed? Well, of course they are. So like a way to look at it is, if you want a glass of orange juice, a better way, it takes 6 oranges to make a glass of orange juice. So if you want some orange juice, or the byproduct of an orange, then if you eat the orange, just say you eat 2 oranges, you'll feel fuller if you eat 2 oranges and then drinking 1 glass. And you'll get the fiber, which tends to fill you up. Because that's, when you think about a chocolate bar, what you're missing out on is exactly that, the fiber that comes with it. Because if I had a Mars bar right now, or a Snickers bar, don't get me wrong, they're awesome. I love eating them. But I could suck the damn thing down and it wouldn't even feel like it touches the sides. And then I'm like, well, I'm still hungry.
Yeah.
But what's meant to happen is, if I looked at something sweet, like maybe a corn cob, so corn, it's reasonably sweetish, a carrot, it's sweeter. If I tried to get the same sort of sweetness from one Mars bar, from a corn cob, I reckon I'd probably need to eat maybe 10, 15 kilos of corn. Like, that's a lot of fiber, So as we've mass-produced refined sugar, we've actually kind of tricked the way that their body thinks, in terms of, I want this sweet thing, but I don't want the other stuff that's attached to it, which is the fiber. The fiber makes us feel full. The fiber helps regulate our blood sugar level and it stops us from eating all the other foods. You know what I mean? So that's why making sure you're having those fruits and vegetables in that diet. So, like, for argument's sake, might be 2 pieces of fruit and 3 servings of vegetables per day when you base your nutrition plan, that you hit those targets, and then you look at, okay, well, they're my base. I've got those. Okay, and then let's build the proteins, let's build the carbohydrates, and then let's see how we feel. Are we still hungry? All right, well, let's go another serving of vegetables if we've got that, because there's not a lot of calories in the fiber of most vegetables. Like one apple. Yeah, one apple's got like 60 calories in it, or a banana might have 150, but gee, it's got to be a bloody big banana. Or a watermelon, watermelon's great. It's all water. There's not a lot in there. I haven't really known anyone to go and be excessively overweight from eating too much watermelon. It just doesn't. It's from eating processed food that's shrunk down. Remove the fiber, keep the sweet stuff, and then store whatever that sweet stuff is in the body from inactivity or something like that. So
So what you're saying, on the very basics there of, if you're hungry in the sense of you need a snack or you need something more, go for your fruits or your vegetables first, because you're going to get that nutritional fiber and you're going to feel full, you're going to feel better, but you won't. There's a lack of processed sugars in there, so you won't run the risk of gaining extra weight that you don't need, or so on and so forth. It's the healthier alternative for everyone out there.
In terms of eating, I don't know, let's take it to an extreme and eating 10 pieces of fruit in a day. Well, you're probably going running to the toilet because you're going to have maybe the runs or something like that. But that's probably taking it to an extreme. But if a person mainly bases their diet from whole foods and tries to minimize how much packet food that they actually have, then all of a sudden, when you look at it, you cut out all this packet stuff over here, all this tin stuff, all these sauce things, and it's all based on this is the way Mother Nature presented it to us when it came off the tree, you know. And when food plans are built like that, now they're relabeled with the way that we do, the way that marketing presents it. They go and wrap it up and they call it, oh, it's paleo, or it's keto, or it's this, or it's the Mediterranean diet. You know what? It's the same stuff. It's all the same. It's from a whole food, eating the raw product as the way it is, and reducing how much processed food there is. And then by doing that, well, it's gonna fix a lot of issues. All of a sudden, I've just knocked out every single takeaway that you can possibly buy.
Yeah.
Because if you take a pickle out of a Big Mac, then that pretty much they put the pickle in so that it's not classed as confectionery because of the amount of sugar that's actually in the bread roll.
Yeah.
So things like that.
Yeah, damn.